Okay, I'm sure you can hear me. Good morning, everybody. If you can, although I've muted everybody. Good morning, and okay, you can unmute yourself before the lecture starts. You can unmute yourself. So, good morning, everybody.
Good morning,
Good morning,
sir. Good morning, sir.
Please, if you know that your network is not good enough, please can mute yourself. I will mute everybody once the lecture starts. Welcome to BIO 101 lecture for the 2024-25 academic session. Or let me first welcome you to the University of Lagos. I want to believe this is the first lecture we'll be having. Okay, I think I may have to mute everybody now. Some people are not. We have to mute everybody. Okay, I think I've been able to remove the noise. Okay, I said, welcome to the University of Lagos, and I'm sure this will be your first lecture as a student in the university. So, welcome, and congratulations on your admission. Right? Please, I think we have reached the maximum capacity of 300 on Zoom. Others may please want to join via YouTube. So please, you can send the YouTube link to your colleagues so that they can join. So let me resend the YouTube link now. So others that are not able to join can join the YouTube link. We have reached the capacity on Zoom. So others can join via YouTube. If you don't have access to join on YouTube, please join. Sorry, if you don't have access to join on Zoom, please join on YouTube. Okay. Good morning once again, everybody, and welcome to the class. So the course title is General Biology, and course code is BIO101. This course used to be taught as FSC111, but like I informed you guys earlier, we are starting a new curriculum in the university known as the CCMAS. So under this new curriculum, the old FSC111 is now taken as BIO101 as a unit, and BIO as 2-unit course, then BIO107 as a 1-unit course. BIO101 is the theoretical aspect of the course, while BIO107 deals with the practical. And you are going to be assessed separately on the two courses. So you are enjoined to please take BIO101 lecture seriously. And when we start a BIO107, which is General Biology Practical 1, you are enjoined, you are admonished to please not to miss any of your practical, because that practical is like examination. Everyone counts, right? And you are going to be graded based on that practical, and your results will be uploaded for the practical. So you have a practical course in BIO107. And please, like I said, some departments, due to the new curriculum, I don't know, I'm not sure whether they are still offering BIO107 and or BIO101. So please clarify from your departments, especially before you go ahead and buy manual, so that you won't just waste your money. So please clarify. For BIO101, you don't have anything to lose if you join the class, right? So if you are not taking 101 later, it's a matter of just forgetting about it. But for BIO107, there are more commitments. So please, before you do anything, always ask questions, not only from your predecessors, but also from your department and or course advisor. Okay, without much ado, let's start the class. So I'll be taking two aspects of the class, of the lecture, the introductory part, which is the concept of biology and scientific inquiry, which is what we are doing today, as well as biomolecules. So I'll be taking you for 2 weeks before other people come in. Oh, let me not say 2 weeks, 2 topics, because it's possible that we're able to finish the 2 topics in less than 2 weeks. And talking about that, I don't know, maybe on Wednesday in the morning, I want to schedule a class so that we can do things and move on very fast. So on Wednesday morning, 8 a.m., tentatively, we are going to be having this lecture as well. So you can just tick that on your calendar. 8 or 9, I will let you know. In the morning on Wednesday, we may have BIO101 lecture virtually on Zoom. Okay, like I said earlier, I'll be taking concept of biology today, where we shall be looking at a definition of biology. What are the characteristics or properties of living things, the unifying themes in biology, and method of scientific inquiry. These are the aspects we'll be covering under this topic. So let's start. So by definition, what is biology? Right? Biology studies life. Biology is the study of life, study of living things. Biology. Please don't drop your name. Don't drop your name and registration number. I will take that from Zoom. You don't need to drop your attendance. Just log in with your name, not your phone name now. When you log in, make sure that you are logging in with your name. Please, I have started recording. Please. You don't need to request to record. I have started recording. I will share the link with you after the class. So you don't need to request for that. I know what is right. I have started recording. Then after the lecture, I will share with you so that you can listen to the lecture again. Like I said, you don't need to drop your name in the chat room. I will pick your name automatically from Zoom. So just make sure that you are logging in with your name, not your phone name. And your full name now, I can see Abdulaziz. Abdulaziz is not your full name, right? Register with your full name, right? Bolanle, that is not a full name. Daniel is not a full name. Danny K is not a name. So please, if you are logging into your Zoom, you are advised to please log in with your full name, like Dolapo Afolabi, but you can write all your names. Dr. Adam Strange, I don't know, maybe you joined this class by mistake, but please, if you don't have any business here, you don't have to join. And if you are joining, please join using your full name. Elishama is no name. I will not come to the chat room to be picking attendance, right? So if you drop your name in the chat room, you are just doing it for fun. I will not come to the chat room to pick attendance. I will always get my attendance from the Zoom. There's a section on Zoom where I can download the attendance sheet. So please always join with your full name, your first name, your middle name, and your surname, or your surname, your first name, and your middle name. But make sure that the 3 or the 2 names appear. Okay, that is that. So what is biology? Biology is the study of life, right? Biology studies life. Biology is the study of living thing, right? Please, if you are joining with your father's phone, don't drop anything. Don't drop your name. I will not come to the chat room to be looking for your name. Please join with your phone. If you are joining with your daddy's phone, change the name. Zoom will ask you, change the name to your name, right? If you are joining with anybody's phone, change that name on the Zoom link to your own name. There's a place you can set it that it will show your name. How do I know who is joining with their daddy's phone? I will be looking for that. So please, that request is not allowed. It's invalid. I'm not coming to the chat room to pick attendance for any reason. Thank you. Okay. Biology studies life. Biology is the scientific study of life. Biology is the study of living things, right? So there are different, depending on how you want to put it. But when you define biology, there are two key terms, right, that should appear in your definition, right? And those words are science and life. So whenever you are defining biology, make sure that the word science or scientific study, right? You can say biology is the science that studies life, right? Or biology is the scientific study of life, right? Because if you say that biology is the study of life, how do we study that life? It is scientifically. So that science has to show or appear or be mentioned in your definition of biology. Biology is the scientific study of life. Biology is the science that studies life. Then some people put living things. Yes, but a living thing is not just a living thing. What qualifies a living thing to be a living thing is the presence of life. So if there is no life, there is no living thing. So life is much more acceptable at this level, right? In your secondary school, living things, yes, acceptable, good. But now we are telling you that it's not just living things. There are organisms that qualify, you can say they are living things, but they are not really a living thing. By the time we look at properties of living thing, we'll be able to judge whether certain things are living things or not. So anything that does not have life is not a living thing. And biology does not deal with those things like your stone. Biology does not study stone, does not study matter, right? But biology study plants because plants have life in them and they are able to carry out certain properties, certain characteristics that define living thing, right? So biology study life in all its forms, including the study of single cells to the global interactions of millions of organisms, right? So biology does not just study an organism, right? It goes deeper into the cell, right? It goes deeper into the cell to study, okay, what makes up a living thing? Why do we call this thing a living thing? Why is a man called a living thing? Because it has organs, because the organs have tissues that aggregate together to perform specific functions, because those tissues are made up of cells, right? So biology goes to cellular level, deeper to molecular level to study living things, right? And cell, we can have multicellular organisms, we can have unicellular organisms, right? So down from there to as much as millions of organisms that interact, right? If we have different organisms that come together to interact, biology wants to know those interactions. How do one living thing affects or interacts with other organisms? So that is biology for you. And I said earlier that before you can say certain thing qualifies to be called a living thing, there are characteristics or properties that we expect to have. There are certain features or characteristics that we expect a living thing to have, and they must possess all of those characteristics before you can say this particular thing is a living thing or it's not or it's a non-living thing. So what are the properties of life? Where we're coming from, we were told Mr. Najadi, a living thing moves, a living thing reproduces, a living thing feeds, right? A living thing does what again? Is sensitive, then dies, respires, and what have you. Yes, they are still valid, right? All those properties that you are taught in secondary school are still valid. But here, we're going to be looking at it in another dimension, right? Number one, for an organism to be called, for a thing to be called a living thing, or all organisms or all living things are expected to have cells, right? All living things are made up of cells, and that is one of your cell theories, right? All living things are made up of cells, right? And those cells come from pre-existing cells, right? So for you to say that this is an organism, that organism must have a cell, at least, whether unicellular or multicellular. So if it does not have a cell, it's not a living thing, right? So one feature that distinguishes a living thing from a non-living thing is the presence of a cell. Anything that does not have cell does not qualify to be called a living thing. And that is why biology will say there is no life outside cell. So if you take cell away from it, it's no longer a living thing. So, and we know we have different type of cells. We have prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. Some organisms are also multicellular and unicellular. Prokaryotes, depending on whether their organelles are membrane bound, right, or not. In eukaryote, there are membrane bound organelles. In prokaryotes, such is not seen. Then, on the level of number of cells, some organisms have just one cell, and they are known as unicellular organisms, and they are still able to carry out all the other properties of life as long as they have that cell. Cell is the most important feature that you expect an organism to have. Once a cell is present, then all other things can follow. Then there is order in organisms. You expect living things to have order, right? There is order in living things. They are complex and ordered, right? If you look at organisms, so that there is level of complexity, right, in different organisms. Cell to tissue, tissue to organ, organ to organ systems, and like that. So there is types of orderliness. Everything is not just they don't just occur without having what they do, right? There is orderliness and there is responsibilities. There are responsibilities for your ribosomes has to be where it's supposed to be, right? The DNA has to be in the nucleus. The mitochondrion has to perform certain things, right? So there is order, there is like will I call it a division of labor now, right? Things are not just there for being there sick, and you expect them to carry out certain functions. And organisms are expected to respond to their environment, right? Organisms respond to their environment. So organisms don't just they can't respond, you beat them, they can't talk, they can't move, right? So they're supposed to be respond to external factors in their environment, like the sun, like touch, like heat or temperature, right? Anything that cannot do this is not a living. Then organisms reproduce. If you're a living thing, you're supposed to give birth to younger ones so that that species can be propagated and to keep them alive. For instance, if humans stop reproducing or a certain organism stop reproducing, before you know it, that particular organism will go into extinction, right? It will be no more because there will be no successive generation to keep on the species, right? So organisms, living things reproduce. They give birth to young ones of their kind, not just giving birth to young ones. That is, tiger must give birth to a tiger, right? Not just giving birth to any particular organism. So they reproduce their own kind. Organisms reproduce their own kind. Then there's adaptation. Organisms are expected to adapt to their environment, because without adaptation, there can't be survival. Right? So wherever organisms find themselves, they're supposed to adapt. Adaptation, right? And I'm sure in your biology, you have different types of adaptation mechanisms, right? Your mimicry, your camouflage in animals, then plants, rainforest plants have different adaptation to desert plants, right? Right. And savanna plants or what have you, right? So there is adaptation. Organisms are expected to adapt to their environment. Then there is growth and development. If you're an organism, you're supposed to be able to grow or change throughout life. And we see this in humans. Let's use humans as our case study. If you give birth today, right, we expect that organism to grow and develop. If you give birth to a child today and the next 10 years is still a baby, and everybody's like that, over time, you see that such organism will not be able to survive and be able to propagate and keep on its species. Right? Okay. Before we move on, I said that biology studies life. Biology is the scientific study of life. And I said that whenever you are defining your term, your biology, certain words are expected to feature, if I may use that word, in your definition, right? Science, life. Scientific study of life, right? And I said that before an organism, a thing can be called an organism or a living thing, there are certain features or characteristics that we expect that thing to exhibit. And one of them is the cell, which is actually the most important, right? Anything that does not have cell does not qualify to be called organisms. Then orderliness, sensitivity or response to stimuli, right? Which you call irritability in your secondary school, right? Reproduction, organisms are expected to reproduce their own kind. Then we have mentioned adaptation as one of the features of or characteristics or properties of life or living things, if we may go with that word. Then we have also said that there is growth and development. There is growth and development. Organisms are expected to grow and develop over time. Another feature of living thing or characteristics of living thing is regulation, right? Organisms are able to regulate or coordinate their internal environment. That is the need to coordinate their internal function, the organs, your systems, how are they functioning? Are they able to metabolize as and when due, right? That is a regulation. The water level, all of this, the ion concentration in the body, all of these are regulated. Then there's homeostasis, which is maintain of stable internal balance, like a kind of a balance. There's supposed to be a balance in the organism, right? Then there is energy processing. Organisms are able to metabolize, to carry out catabolism and anabolism, right? Which is able to build chemicals and use them, like your photosynthesis and respiration, right? Organisms are able to process energy, right? Obtain food, process it, and use it for certain functions, right? We need energy in different forms, in different ways, rather. We need energy in different ways. And as an organism, whether you are autotrophs or heterotrophs, you're supposed to make use and utilize, produce and utilize energy. Whether you acquire it, you're supposed to use it, or you are able to make energy, as in plants or green algae that are able to carry out photosynthesis, right? So that is that on characteristics of life. And I don't know, maybe we have, does anyone have a question? You can maybe drop it in the chat room. And I want to, before we proceed, I want to appreciate our food soldiers in the BIO101-107 info, people that are helping us to circulate information. Please keep it up, and let's continue to do what we are doing. Like I said, your essence of that platform is to be able to circulate information, especially now that the school is not has not resumed for physical, has not resumed physical activities in your house, but being away does not mean that you cannot learn, right? So, and that is where the world is going. We have to embrace technology in whatever we do, because not that we not do physical lecture, don't get me wrong, but when there are constraints, we need to adjust. That you are at home does not mean that you cannot learn. And as a word of advice, don't just join the Zoom and go and Zoom away. Some of you will join Zoom and you'll be doing what you like, right? You are not helping yourself. So please, don't join the Zoom and go and be bathing or go and be preparing breakfast. The lecture is 8 o'clock. Prepare before 8. You don't need to bath. Nobody will see you that you have not bathed and you are receiving lectures, right? You don't even need to brush your teeth. Just put your alarm. 7:45, they have sent the link. Let me go and join and get set for class, right? So please, it is in your own interest. Do not miss classes and not just join the classes for joining sake. Always be present and participate lectures. I can see on YouTube we have over 400 participants, and presently on Zoom we have reached the maximum capacity on Zoom. So kudos to you guys, although we expect more than that, especially on YouTube, because we expect about 2,000 students for this course. And if the number of students we have now is just less than 800, that means we have not reached half of our expected audience. So please encourage your colleagues to join. Lecture has started. What we are doing today, we're not going to repeat it. So don't think when school resume, we will start teaching you all over again. Who told you are resuming this year? I mean, you are resuming soon. What if you are just writing the exam from your house again? I'm not saying you are writing the exam from home. I'm just saying, what if there is not going to be physical contact, except you come for your practical and you go home. So please do not take anything for granted. Join your class as and when due, and encourage others. Even if you have not done your clearance, you don't need to do clearance to accept to attend classes. You don't need anything. The only thing you need is your phone and internet connection on that phone to be able to join, or whatever device you are using, maybe your laptop, internet connection. Then you are live and direct. Okay, we have been able to define biology. We have been able to establish certain characteristics that a living thing must possess or have. So I want to ask you, based on what we have done today, will you classify a virus as a living thing? Why? Why not? Maybe that would be, let's take that as an assignment that you go and find out. You don't need to submit. Just go and read up. Just go and do it. Is virus a living thing? Why or why not? Does it have cell? Does it reproduce? Does it respond to stimuli? Does it adapt? Does it grow and develop? Does it process energy on its own? So, using these criteria, these properties of living things, you may now want to answer whether a virus is a living thing or not a living thing. Why? If it's a living thing, why not? If it is not a living thing. So that is your assignment number 1 for today that you are not going to submit to me. So don't bring assignment to my office. Read it and answer the question in your notes. You never can tell. Maybe when we meet physically, I can say, okay, I give you an assignment. If you do it, I will just bless you. How? I don't know. Okay. So this figure summarizes the major characteristics that we have looked at. So from order to regulation in no particular order actually, to response to environment and what have you. Then you see the order there, we have a sunflower that has a very highly ordered and structure that characterizes life. Then we have regulation. We have regulation. We have energy processing, right? You see that a rabbit with a very long hair is able to regulate the flow of blood through the blood vessels to the air before you can have to maintain a constant body temperature, right? So then we have reproduction. You have that giraffe there with its sibling, with its offspring, right? So we said one of the features of living thing is that reproduction. You can see that giraffe and the young one beside it. So that living things or organisms must reproduce their own kind. Must reproduce their own kind. Then you see that plant there that is sensitive to touch. When you touch it, it closes up. It closes up. Then we have evolutionary adaptation. We have energy processing depicted by the bird. That bird is able to utilize energy for flight, right? So to process energy to be able to fly. So growth and development, right? These are features of living things, right? Then we have levels of organization of living things. Don't forget we said there is order in living things. So there is order and there is the level to this order. Like we said earlier, living things are highly structured and organized. And if you look at it in your secondary school biology, when you talk about organization of life or the hierarchy of life, you see cell to tissue, tissue to organ, organ to system, system to organism. Yes, it's correct, but that is not, cell is not the beginning and organism does not end it. So here we're taking it deeper and higher. So if you say that a cell, right, is where life starts from, what about that cell does not just, the cell is not just surviving on its own. Yes or yes? There are certain organelles, right, that help that particular cell to do certain things, right? There are proteins that help the organelle to do what they are doing for the cell. That protein is a molecule, right? And it has, as a molecule, there are atoms that make up molecules, right? So here we say that the study of life begins from that atom. The study of life begins from the atoms, then atoms to molecules, molecules to organelles, organelles to cell, cell to tissue, tissue to organ, organ to organ system, organ system to organism, organism to population, population to ecology, population to community, community to ecosystem to biosphere. So in between, you have your cell to the organism, right? But we don't study biology or life from just the cell level. So we have atom. So the atom is the smallest and most fundamental unit of a matter, right? So it consists of nucleus and electrons. Then molecule. A molecule is two or more atoms that are held together by a chemical bond. What is the name of that bond? Assignment number 2 for today. We said a molecule is two or more atoms that are held together by a chemical bond. What type of chemical bond holds two atoms together in a molecule? Is it electrovalent bond? Is it covalent bond? Is it ionic bond? Is it hydrogen bond? I don't know. So that's the assignment number 2 for today. Like I said earlier, these assignments, I may not collect them, but you are advised to answer them. So we said a molecule is two or more atoms that are held together by a chemical bond. So atoms can either be sulfur, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, even phosphorus, right? Carbon. These atoms are held together. For instance, in carbohydrates. Carbohydrate is a macromolecule, for instance. A carbohydrate is made up of how many atoms? 3. Your carbon, your hydrogen, and the oxygen, right? And the type of bond that hold them together is what I am asking you to find out. What type of bond hold carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen together in carbohydrates? So we have macromolecules. Macromolecules are large molecules that are formed by combining smaller units known as monomers. And macromolecules can also be referred to as polymers. In biology, we call them biomolecules. That is biological molecules. That is those molecules that are of biological importance, right? And that is why we cannot just start studying our life from cell, because there are molecules that help that cell to actually do what it's doing. Like a cell in the body, for instance, is your what type of cell now? Your red blood cells, for instance. Red blood cells helps to do what? To transport oxygen. Then what helps that red blood cell to transport oxygen is your hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a protein, right? So if hemoglobin is a protein, protein is a molecule. Then that hemoglobin is about there are biomolecules that come together to help that hemoglobin to carry out oxygen, to transport oxygen around the body. So we don't just start studying life at the cell. If you say a cell, red blood cells, right, transport oxygen, they do what they do. Your white blood cells, they fight. What help them to fight, right? So all of these things are all important in biology. So I said start from the atom to molecules, molecules to organelles. What are organelles? Organelles are small microscopic structures. They are small, they are tiny, they are microscopic. That is, you cannot see them with your ordinary eyes, right? Your eyes need to be aided, maybe with a microscope, to be able to see them. That is why they say that they are microscopic. You need a microscope to see them. They are small, they are tiny structures that help the cell to perform certain functions that help your red blood cells to transport oxygen, right? They are organelles. So we have different type of organelles. We have your nucleus, which is the control center of the cell. We have the chloroplast in plant cell that helps to manufacture food. We have the mitochondrion, that is the powerhouse of the cell that generates energy. We have the ribosomes that make protein, We have the centrioles in animal cells that help in fiber movement during cell division, that is in cell division. We have the cytoskeleton that gives structure and shape to the cell, right? So we have different organelles that perform certain function for the cell, certain organelles that perform certain function for the cell. Just as you use your hand to feed, you walk, right? We have the Golgi, we have the Golgi body, we have the endoplasmic reticulum, right? That's certain organs are helping in trafficking, in packaging, in sorting, in garbage disposal. So these are organelles that help the cells to perform certain functions. Then we have the cell, right, which is the basic fundamental, structural, and functional unit of life. The fundamental, structural, and functional unit of life. Then, like we said earlier, all living things are made up of cell. If it does not have cell, it's not a living thing. That is number one feature you look out for in an organism. Does it have cell? If it does, it's a living thing. Okay, we have been able to establish the different levels of organization in living things. We said that the atom is the smallest and most fundamental unit of a matter, and you start studying life from the atom, because the atoms come together in a bound together by a chemical bond to give you molecule, and these molecules will help the organelles to perform certain function through the organelles to perform certain functions. Then the organelles will do certain function for the cell, right? So that is the hierarchy, right? The hierarchical organization of the cell structure, from atom to molecule. And the molecule in biology, we refer to them as biomolecules, or even organic molecules, because they are made up of carbon. So biomolecules or organic molecules. I'm still going to take that part of the course later. So we are going to delve more on those biomolecules, your protein, your nucleic acid, the carbohydrates, and your fatty acids, now your lipids, right? Lipids. These are the four major biomolecules that we deal with in biology. Okay, let's proceed. Then the cells combine to make a tissue. Tissue, the group of similar cells that carry out the same function, this definition. Then from tissue to organ, organ to organ systems. So the organ systems consist of functionally related organs, right? Then we have organisms. The organism is the individual entity, right? An organism, like a particular plant, maybe your mistletoe plant, or your sunflower, or your mango is an organism. That's a mango tree is an organism. Or you, right? You are an organism. Then from organism to population, so we have a population. A population is a group of individuals of the same species that are able to interbreed and are found at a particular place at a given time. So a population of goats, population of humans, right? Population of cattle, population of mango tree, right? So population deals with group of organisms of the same species. One, that are able to interbreed. Two, that are found at a particular place. Three, at a particular time. Four. So when you're defining your population, those key terms are important. They are a species, they can interbreed. If they cannot interbreed, then they are not a population. They are separate populations. For instance, population of goat on one hand, population of elephant on the other hand, right? Then they are found at a particular place at a particular time. The population of cattle in Kano in 2025? Or your census, the population of Lagos inhabitants, population of humans living of human being in Lagos in 2024, right? So that is why when you somebody asks what is interbreed, I will come back to that. When you are defining population, when you're doing for your population census, you demarcate, right? Okay, Lagos, how many are they? Oyo, how many are they? Ekiti, how many are they? Akwa Ibom, how many are they? So what you are dealing with is population of particular organism to population of humans, population of shark in River Nile, right? So somebody asked what is interbreed? Interbreed means they are able to reproduce, right? Naturally, human and human can reproduce. Lion with lion can mate and reproduce. That is, they are able to reproduce, interbreed. They're able to come together in male and female, not lion and tiger. That one is not a natural phenomenon, not human and elephant. So organisms of the same species that are able to interbreed, that is, they are able to come together and what's it called, and reproduce their own kind, right? Human come together to give birth to human, right? Goats come together to give birth to goats. That is what I mean by interbreeding. They are able to breed and give birth to younger ones. Then a community is a set of populations inhabiting a particular area. So community, we're looking at different populations, communities with different populations of different organisms in a particular area. As the name implies, community. In your community where you stay, for instance, you have population of different organisms. We have population of humans, population of goats, population of cats, of dog, of different type of animal, of plants in your community. So from population to community. So community is broader than population. It's more encompassing than population. Population where you are dealing with a particular organism, right? Maybe goat, human, or elephant, or mango tree. But when you look at community, you are looking at aggregates of different populations of organisms, right? You're looking at, for instance, even in that your room where you are seated presently, you have a community. You are not the only one in that room. You have ants, you have mosquito. They are also organisms, yes or yes. You have cockroach in your cupboard, right? So in your room is a community on its own. You have the air that interacts, right? So community deals with different organisms, different populations of organisms. Then ecosystem consists of both the living and non-living thing in a particular area. For instance, your room is an ecosystem. You have air, right? You have so many things. You have so many organisms. You are also a population of cockroach, ant, spider in that room. So ecosystem is more encompassing than community. So you see that we don't stop at organism now. From organism, we go to what? Population. From population, we move on to community. From community, we move on to ecosystem, which encompasses the non-living and the living components, right? In a particular environment or area. For instance, the ecosystem deals with the sun, not only the living organism that you have, but the sun, the temperature, the humidity, right? How these interact to affect each other or one another. How does the air affect the plants? How does temperature affect the plants? How do the plants even affect one another? Do they compete, right? How do animals affect the plants? That is what the ecosystem deals with. That is the living and non-living components. The living and non-living, the living thing is known as a biotic. The living component of an ecosystem is known as the biotic, and the non-living thing is known as the abiotic component, right? Then we have the biosphere. From a secondary school biology, you have the biosphere, the lithosphere, and what have you, the sphere that you have. But you know that the biosphere is that part of the earth that supports life, right? The biosphere, and the land, the water, and portions of the atmosphere that supports life. So that is the organization of life or of living things. So in the main sense, in the real sense, the organization starts from atom to biosphere, and not from cell only to organism, like we were told or we used to know. So organization of life starts from atom to biosphere. So that is the hierarchical organization of living things. So we said the atom by in summary now, we said from atom to molecule, molecules to organelles, organelles to cell, cell to tissue, tissue to organ system, to organisms, to population, to community, to ecosystem, to the biosphere. That is the organization, the levels of organization of living things. And if you have gotten your BIO107 manual, you are enjoined to please, there are synopses and practical in that manual. It's not just manual. Please, you can read along. And I have sent recommended text to you guys via a Google Drive link. Please do open it and see some relevant chapters. Not just that I'll be reading all the over 1,000 pages of the textbook. No, there are some things there that are not relevant to you. So, okay, we have done unifying themes in biology. We have done properties of life. Where can I see properties of life in the textbook? Then you read it and you gain more understanding of what we are saying. Who has a link to the drive? What department are you? You shouldn't be asking that, because I have sent that a long time ago through your representatives on that platform. So physiotherapy, which drive? Wow, Google Drive. Like, is how do I put it now? It's in the cloud. Like, you have your flash drive now. Instead of carrying it about, I can stay in my house and put it in the cloud and send the link to you. Like, I send my YouTube link to you. So I send that link to your platform. And okay, I will ask, if you don't have physiotherapy, we have physiotherapy. Somebody in physiotherapy in that class. Maybe, and some people have different groups. So somebody was saying that he belongs to more than 5 groups for just this year one. Maybe you are not in the right group. So please ask your colleagues around if there are other groups where you guys get information. I have sent that. There are 2 textbooks that I recommended for this course, and I have sent the 2 to you. And if you know more, you can still read, as long as you are not reading amiss. Okay. So please, my friend in microbiology, kindly in physiotherapy rather, kindly do diligence to, okay, somebody is sending the link again. Thank you. Please, you can copy it now, and please see the textbooks, and make sure you get familiar with the relevant chapters there. Okay. Okay, maybe before we proceed, maybe I can take 1 or 2 questions in the chat room, but my chat room is messed up already. Is it Annie's format? I don't know. Which one is Annie's format? Please, if you have any question regarding what we have done so far, you may drop them in the chat room and I will answer. I will pick just 2 randomly and we move on. And if you don't have any question, I will assume that we are all on a page. Any question in the chat room before we go on? Must all living things possess all the features to be classified as living things? Emphatically, yes. If it is not a living thing, If it does not reproduce, for instance, it's not a living thing. If it is not sensitive to environment, it's not a living thing. If it does not have cell, yes, all organisms must satisfy, must possess all the features, all the characteristics, and even more before we can call them living things. Not just the 9 that we listed for you, there are still some. What is the difference between organelle and organ? Organelle is a structure, a microscopic structure that helps the cell to perform certain functions, while the organs are much more complex than the organelle, right? Organs are, what is it called? Tissues that perform similar functions, that aggregation of tissues that perform similar functions are known as organs, whereas organelles, okay, maybe this the spelling, organelles are not from organs, and they are even distant apart. From organelle, you have cell to tissue before you can now reach organ. So organelle are structures that help the cell to perform certain functions, while organ, for instance, your liver is an organ, right? Your liver is an organ, right? That they also have their function that they perform, but they are more complex than organelles. So what are prokaryotic cells? We will get to prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. Don't worry. Okay, difference between regulation and homeostasis. Okay, regulation deals with maintaining internal environment, right? Whereas homeostasis deals with maintaining internal environment, whereas regulation deals with both internal and external. That is, you have to regulate. The temperature is outside, then you have to adjust your system to it, right? To be able to, what is it called? To be able to perform optimally. So regulation, homeostasis deals with internal. You are regulating your internal, a stable, a balanced internal environment. Whereas regulation is more encompassing. Regulation deals with both internal and the external environment. That is, regulation also deals with maintaining, what's it called? Regulation also has to do with your environment. Like how do you regulate the temperature and that is coming from outside and still be able to adjust. So regulation is much more encompassing than what's it called? Than homeostasis. Homeostasis simply deals with maintaining internal stable environment, but regulation needs to do with environment, like the heat change in the environment as well. External factors that the organism deal with in the environment. Is there a reason why viruses can reproduce in non-living cells or environments? I think I gave you an assignment on virus, so I will not answer that question. Go and it's an assignment for you. So, okay, let's continue. Let's continue the class. So, while I was doing this, classification of organisms, right? Organism carriers, somebody has asked us. Classification of organisms. Organisms can be categorized majorly into two, depending on whether their organelles are bound in, whether they have a membrane-bound nucleus, right, or not. For instance, prokaryotes are single-cell organisms that do not have membrane-bound nucleus or organelles surrounded by a membrane. That is, they don't have a membrane-bound nucleus. Their organelles are not bounded by a membrane, whereas eukaryotes have membrane-bound nucleus and other membrane-bound organelles. And that is majorly the difference between prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Prokaryotes lack membrane-bound organelles and nucleus, and the eukaryotes have a membrane. Their nucleus and other organelles are bound by a membrane. So, e.g., your plants, even human beings are eukaryotes. Whereas bacteria is an example of a prokaryote. They are simple and they don't have a membrane-bound organelles. So that is that for. So still on organization of life. So we said that the biosphere is that part that supports life. There's from biosphere to the ecosystem, which comprises both the living and non-living component of the environment. As you can see in this picture that depicts ecosystem, you have the air, the temperature, the atmosphere. You can see the cloud there. You can see different types of plants, right? Then when you come to community, you have a community of plants, the population of plants. You have animal in that community. Like I said, population deals with only a species of organism. Then when you come to population, you have a group of organisms, and you see that under the image that depicts population, you have a particular type of plants, right? Then organism is a plant, a particular plant, right? It's an organism. Then under that, after organism, you have organ. A leaf of that particular plant is an organ. Then tissue. That leaf has certain tissues that help it to do certain functions. The trachea, the sclerenchyma, the parenchyma, different types of tissues that we have in plants. Then we have cell, right? That cell has organelle. Organelle, for instance, your chloroplast is an organelle in the plant cell. Then plant cell has the organelle has molecules that help you to perform certain functions. Example is your chlorophyll in plants. The chlorophyll is a molecule that are made up of is a molecule that is made up of atoms. So this just tells us the hierarchy of the different levels of organization from the biosphere, right? The biosphere to ecosystem, to community, to population, to organism, a particular plant. Then that plant has organ, e.g. leaf. The leaf is an organ that helps the plants to carry out photosynthesis and water. Then the tissue, cell to organelle, chloroplast is an organelle. Then in that chloroplast has a chlorophyll molecule that is made up of atoms. So that is that on organization of life. So let's look at unifying themes in biology. But before we proceed, I think I don't think I'm too fast, and I hope that we are gaining one or two things. We are gaining one or two things, and so let's go to unifying themes in biology. So when we talk about unifying themes in biology, we're talking about concepts that come up together that that we always come about in biology, right? That is what
unifying themes in biology deals with, right? Like concepts that we cannot but come across in biology. Those are what we refer to as unifying themes, right? The concepts that connect biology or many fields of biology. There are ideas that come up time after time. One of them, we have the cell, we have the systems, the structure and function, emergent properties, reproduction and inheritance, homeostasis, and interactions, evolutions. All of these are unifying themes of biology. So look at them one after the other. Like we said earlier, the cells are the basic structural and functional units of life, right? And there are two major types of cells that an organism can belong to, either of the two, whether you're a prokaryote or a eukaryote. So prokaryote cells do not have membrane-bound organelles, and they also lack membrane-bound organelles and nucleus, right? So whereas their examples are bacteria, then we have the eukaryotes. Eukaryotes, they contain membrane-bound or membrane-enclosed organelles, and such some, for instance, your nucleus is an organelle that is membrane-bound. It has its own membrane, and other organelles are enclosed in a membrane in eukaryotes. So they possess organelles separated by membranes. Examples are plants, animals, and fungi. All these are eukaryotes or eukaryotic cells. They are organelles, they are eukaryotic cells. And if you look at this picture, you can see eukaryotes, prokaryotic cells to the left hand, and the eukaryotic cells to the right hand. And you see the DNA of that prokaryotic cell is lying freely in the cytoplasm. It is not enclosed in a nucleus. And we have a eukaryote. The nucleus contains the DNA. The DNA is found in the nucleus, right? And other organelles are enclosed by a membrane. Other organelles are in a membrane, and you can see the eukaryote, you can see the membrane here that enclose other organelles, that enclose the other organelles, eukaryotic organisms. But in prokaryote, it is only one membrane, and that membrane has, what's it called, the it has the other component of the cell, right? Not that each organelle is now enclosed in its own separate organelle or membrane rather. For instance, the nucleus has its membrane, right? The chloroplast, they have their membrane. The mitochondrion has its own membrane. But here in prokaryotes, all the organelles that they have that do certain function for them, they all lie freely in the cytoplasm. They are not in a separate membrane or separate membranes, right? So that is major difference between a prokaryotic cell and a eukaryotic cell. Then we have systems. All as a unifying themes of biology, all levels of life have system of related parts, right? So all levels of life is just like a system is an organized group of interacting parts Oh, it's past 9. Okay, let me stop at slide 20 for today. The class is supposed to be from 8 to 9, so that we can all proceed to do other things. Okay, all systems, all levels of life have systems of related parts. So a system is an organized group of interacting parts. These parts work together to make a whole. So you can look at each level of organism as a car, right? Your car has different parts that make it to function, right? So all levels of organisms, whether the cell, whether the molecule, whether the cell, whether the tissue, they have aggregated parts. For instance, the molecule has atoms that makes it to that comes together as the parts. The cell have organelles. Yeah, so all levels of organisms have aggregated or related parts that function. Just as you have your heart is a cell on its own. You have the reproductive system, you have the digestive system, all make up the body system. Then you have the ecosystem, your forests and the deserts, including interacting, living and non-living things that make up the system. So systems have related parts that work in biology. So let's stop here for today. So on Wednesday in the morning, by God's grace, I am fixing a class. So let us let us uh, let us prepare for it, and maybe we can take one or two questions in the chat room before we call it a success. So let me go to the chat room again and see whether we have questions we can take. According to explanation, can I conclude that a prokaryotic organism has just one organelle, sir? No. Do not conclude so. Organelles, a eukaryotic cell does not have just one organelle. They have several organelles, but those organelles are not bound in a membrane. There is no membrane surrounding them. They lie freely in the cytoplasm. What do you mean by heart cell as a system? What do you mean by heart cell as a system? I don't get what you are trying to ask. Maybe you can rephrase your question. Can we say prokaryotic cells have a false nucleus? What do you mean by a false? What is called a false nucleus? What is a false nucleus? What are true nucleus? Okay, I'm trying to go through the questions and see how do you plan to take attendance on YouTube for those that join? That is not, why are you worried about that? That is not your concern now. Are eukaryotic single-celled organisms too? Nucleus control the show the slide from the beginning. Oh, sorry. The lecture is recorded. You will be able to look at it again. Okay. How do you plan to? Okay, does it mean that heart cell is not an organ but a system? I didn't say heart is a system. Heart is an organ. Your heart is an organ, it's not a system. Eukaryotic single-celled organism. 2, eukaryotes can be multicellular or unicellular, right? Eukaryotes can be unicellular or multicellular. So not that, but prokaryotes are single-celled. All prokaryotes are single-celled, but eukaryotes can either be single-celled or unicellular or multicellular rather. Then somebody, let me pick the questions. Can I conclude that unicellular organisms are prokaryotes? Not all unicellular organisms are prokaryotes. So all prokaryotes are unicellular, but not all unicellular are prokaryotes. There are some eukaryotic unicellular organisms as well. Does a prokaryote lack nucleus? Does a prokaryotic cell lack nucleus? A prokaryotic cell, are we going to get slide for today's class? Why are you particular about the slide? Okay. In the absence of any other question, can we call it a success? Okay, thank you everybody for joining today's class. And like I said earlier, let's do it again on Wednesday. What are membranes? How do prokaryotes cells maintain their genetic without a nucleus? Okay. Their genetic material lie in certain portion known as the nucleoid, because they don't have a nucleus. So that's what we call nucleoid in, for instance, in bacteria. That is where their genetic material lies. Prokaryotes do not have nucleus. Their what's it called? Their genetic material is found in a region known as a nucleoid. nucleoid, right? So that is that. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful day.